Green Sally up, Green Sally down. Last done start, gotta tell the ground. Green Sally up, Green Sally down. Last done start, gotta tell the ground. Sally up, Green Sally down. Last done start, gotta tell the ground. Sally up, Green Sally down. Last done start, gotta tell the ground. Sally up, Green Sally down.
Hi, everybody out there in TV land. My name is Jonathan Pulino, and this is Tuesday night. You are watching a live television special. This is The Edge. I'm John Pulino once again. On my left, as always,
Bill Wilson.
yeah, Bill Wilson. How are you?
I'm good.
You look good.
I
You look well.
have to say something.
Go ahead.
Okay, that song has to go. I don't care what we do. We can play anything, but that thing has got to go.
What are your recommendations?
Anything.
Because I want a solution.
Listen,
I want
a
a
solution.
problem.
Listen, you could play P. Diddy for all I care. I don't care what you play.
I like
How about
P.
nothing?
Well, no,
Councilman
you
Giuliano
gotta,
says nothing.
he says nothing. No, you gotta have a little. You gotta have a little background sound.
Did you know?
Yes,
Did you know that Councilwoman Kleckowski used to play percussion?
I heard.
And Councilman Giuliano doesn't care.
Yes,
That came out during this whole campaign. No, he doesn't care. And I'm going to...
she's a tap too.
These are the issues. Okay.
Yes.
But anyway.
Wait. We actually have issues.
No.
But those kind of issues
That's
we
really
can't
the
talk
only
on the
thing
air.
we fight about it within the party. But Billy, how are you? You look well.
I'm good. I'm good.
Your legs are okay?
My knee, it's they're alive. I mean, they're getting there.
Right.
How are you feeling? You look better.
Thank
you have
you.
color in your face again.
Wow.
You don't look like Casper.
Yep. I was a little under the weather for about 10 days.
Yeah, he had pneumonia, folks. Just so you know, he had pneumonic.
I'm not saying it, so.
Yes.
Oh,
And he
okay.
was really sick, and I told him to stay home.
But I
and
didn't.
he did what all children
day.
do. He didn't do it.
No, I'm out campaigning and making television appearances and going to functions and working in headquarters and doing what I should be doing.
Yes.
To,
Even though you were dying in the process.
hey,
He was hacking
I'm
away.
a committed person.
And Middletown, if you got sick, it's because of John Pulino.
It was going good. It was going really good. Hey, we have a live phone tonight. 860-30.
613-31.
That's 860-30.
613-31.
We want to hear from you because that's why we do these shows. And,
Yes.
the past few shows, there have been a lot of calls.
Yes, there has.
All of us on the stage are elected to something or appointed to something.
Yes.
And Chris is a lawyer. So
Yes.
if you have a law question, talk to Chris.
Yes.
I mean, not too much, though. I mean,
Yes.
call him in his office later.
Well, we have two lawyers.
Yeah, but seven.
Yeah, he's a retired lawyer.
Right, but
Yes.
still, call us about issues in Middletown.
If you want to know what's going on with Board of Ed,
Yep.
if you want to know what's going on with Common Council,
Yep.
this is the show to call. And in the second half, you can talk about Common Council and planning and zoning.
And
of course,
the big issue I'm going to throw out, because let's just talk about it right now.
okay.
Redistricting the schools
Oh.
in Middletown. So you were not at the meeting,
No, I
but
was
I would like to hear from you.
I was working.
And I'm going to go to Councilman Giuliano and candidate Chris Petter.
Wait. The thing I love about this is what I love.
Well, explain to the people
Okay,
what they
redistricting.
want to happen.
Well,
please.
what they wanted to do is social economic redistricting.
Okay.
And amongst other things. This was Enza Macra's big idea because she wants to be, and I understand, she wants to be a superintendent someday, and this is her calling
What
card.
is she now, an associate?
She's the assistant superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand. But all of a sudden, you read before that the Democrats that are all running for Board of Ed, they're all for this. They're all for redistricting.
The Democrat
we
side.
need to do this.
Let's
Right, all the
say that
candidates,
again.
Democratic candidates, 5
and
candidates.
it's in writing.
It's in writing. We have it somewhere. It's on tape too somewhere,
I've
but
seen
I
it on
don't
the
know where it
website.
is.
I've seen it on the website.
Yeah, so it's there. But as Republican Party, our candidates have come out and basically against this because they thought that parents weren't involved, they didn't know what was going on. And the funny thing is that they were for it, now they're against it. It's one of those funny things. It's haphazard of what happens when you go to a meeting and there's
Right.
200 parents there not happy about what's going on.
Right.
And all of a sudden they're saying, well, we're against it going that way. And that's what the mayor came out and said. And the Board of Ed candidates on the Democratic side have basically said, yeah, we're against it now.
Right. It's
Anything
very,
to be on the right side.
It's very, the book Animal Farm by George Orwell. It
Yes.
reminds me of that a little bit. It's funny how you're absolutely correct. I could imagine, not that I can get inside the heads of the Democratic candidates for Board of Education, but I think you're absolutely correct. I think they're sitting there going, you know what? Out of the 69 speakers, all 69 speakers including Chris, because Chris spoke too, were against this whole redistricting idea.
Yes.
So let's just go along with the crowd, even though we did.
Wait. It's this. It's sticking the finger up in the air and saying, "Whoa, which way's the wind blowing? Okay, we got to go against this now because 69 people are not going to vote for us if we don't."
And unlike some elected officials, you can Google this. You can go to the Insider or the Middleton Eye. It's all there.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna. Are you done?
Oh, I'm done.
So I'm gonna go to former mayor and Councilwoman Giuliano, followed by candidate Chris Petter on the issue.
Well, we saw the same thing you did.
We sat separately though,
Yeah, we weren't sitting together. You were sitting across the room.
because I was watching other people.
But
I heard.
you know, we're not in violation right now. That's the
big thing.
the big thing is we haven't been cited by the state as being racially imbalanced.
No.
One of our schools being racially imbalanced, which, as I understand, is the only reason you can be forced to redistrict.
Right.
Is to
By
bring
the
yourself
state, yeah.
into racial balance. Redistricting for socioeconomic reasons isn't even on the books.
No.
And they're proposing to use free and reduced lunch data,
Yes.
which is notoriously unreliable
Yeah. Well, of
for
course
determining somebody's socioeconomic. I mean, what are you going to do? Sit there and review everybody's tax returns?
You had mentioned it, W-2 forms, right?
How are you going to know? So they've come up with this idea. Why, I don't know. And obviously, when they floated this thing, it just didn't go well. Nobody in that room that night wanted to see their kid taken out of the school they're attending to be shipped to another one.
Yeah.
No.
And we had people from all 8 elementary schools speak amongst those 69 speakers. Not one of them said, yeah, get me out of where I am and get me into, let me ride 45 minutes across town to another school.
Yeah.
I've never been to, you've been to a lot of meetings. I've never been to a meeting in my life where it is entirely one-sided, with the exception of obviously the superintendent and the associate superintendent. Every single person was against this. I've never seen this in my life.
There was no good news for them that night.
No.
And that's a first for me. And as you said, I've been to an awful lot of meetings on a lot of subjects. And normally, I mean, there might be a very small minority taking one side as opposed to the other. This one, there was none. Absolutely.
It was very bizarre.
The last time I can say there was anything like this was when they were going to put the high school out on East Street out in where I saw so many people or heard so many parents against something. And there was a few, but this one, like you said, there was not one that was for.
But you're right. But at the high school, there were different solutions and different ideas.
Right.
The first gentleman that went up there, and I forgot his name, but he had a petition, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe he had 80 names, 511 names on the petition.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me.
No.
And every single speaker.
Yeah.
I've never seen this in my life.
There was
something is wrong.
Mr. Roberts, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know.
I think that was
Chris Boncini.
Okay.
So something's rotten in Denmark.
Yes.
To paraphrase Hamlet. So, Chris, do you want to jump in here on this? No.
I can spend the entire show just
No,
talking
Chris.
about this topic. But, all right, so let's give a little background of how this all started. Farm Hill is being overused right now. It's at like 120% capacity.
Right.
And the reason Farm Hill is at 120% capacity is because 5 years ago when they did
the original
redistricting, the study showed that Farm Hill was going to be over capacity this year. And instead of coming up with a different plan for the long term, they said, no, let's just go with the plan that's going to mess up Farm Hill in 5 years. So in March, Board of Ed says, let's fix Farm Hill. So they commission the study, they allow the study to go on, and all of a sudden in July, without any other Board of Education meetings talking about this, a redistricting committee pops up. So redistricting was their first solution. Now, what you need to know about why Enza, it's not just because she wants to be a superintendent. Socioeconomic balance was her master's thesis as well. So that's how this gets thrown into the mix. Now, of course, the problem is they don't invite parents at the first meeting to talk about what some of the goals should be. So instead, they have one representative parent from each school, and when one of the parents brought up, busing at the first meeting and how that could be a problem, immediately shot down by the staff, both Dr. Charles and Enza. And Enza has made it very clear that busing is not a big issue. In fact, at the last Board of Education meeting afterwards, she was talking about how kids love the bus because
Yeah, you mentioned that. And
she was talking to a couple people saying kids love the bus because it's unsupervised and they can do whatever they want on the bus. And the fact that that's coming from an associate superintendent on the day after Unity Day. So Unity Day is the 21st, and that's the anti-bullying day that's now in Middletown.
right.
22nd, we have this meeting, and Enza's saying, oh, well, they love busing because it's unsupervised. Now, any administrator in a school system should not want unsupervised time for children because, because you know what happens in unsupervised time,
Yes.
especially when it's unsupervised time and kids are on a bus for 40 to 50 minutes and they're bored.
Well, Chris, let me chime in here a little bit. As an educator, we were told you never, ever leave the kids alone or
No,
unattended
of
in the
course
building,
not.
ever. I mean, bathroom or no bathroom. And the teachers have it set up where if you need to go to the bathroom or there's a fight, the teachers are smart enough to talk to one another and figure it out.
Right.
So this is pounded in our heads constantly, and then all of a sudden I hear this. It's kind of like you have your rules and I have my rules. It goes back to that Animal Farm thing where you've changed the commandment.
Right.
It's bizarre. So,
It's like
Billy,
you're trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, it's
There is no wheel because
No, there
a
is no
wheel
wheel.
does something, Bill.
Well, this does nothing except
Right.
it tees off a lot of parents, and it makes for a big issue
I'll tell you that
coming this
you-
election,
well,
third and third.
And I think in terms of, even if what Dr. Macri was saying, is true, the kids love the bus, their parents don't.
Well, the kids love the bus for their own
For their own reasons.
Yes.
They're children.
Their parents don't. And the
Yes.
parents are the ones who vote. So that's just not going to fly with them.
But here's the problem. The kids don't love the bus.
Right.
No, I
They
knew-
don't
I knew- I
love
knew
the
that.
Not true
bus.
anyway, but
Because the kids, the kids come off the bus on long bus rides. They're more tired. The kids come off the bus because they've been bullied because, our school system currently
unsupervised.
has kindergarten through 5th grade, so a 6-year age gap on one bus. I'm telling you, the kindergartners don't like that bus ride. 5th graders might, but the kindergartners and 1st and 2nd graders don't like the bus ride.
But I think Enza's statement it's just ridiculous. Studies show that kids like to be on the bus. Well, if you interview 10 kids and they had a fun bus ride because you gave them ice cream, of course they're going to say that. I am using hyperbole on purpose, but come on. That's ridiculous. The poor bus drivers.
Well, that's a whole
And
other issue.
I feel bad for the bus drivers because I can imagine what they must go through. But I don't know. Chris, you spoke at the meeting. Did you think the meeting was going to be that one-sided?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, because I've been talking to the parent. Since I'm running for the Board of Ed, I've been talking to the
Right.
parents about Board of Ed topics, and I haven't spoken to a single parent
Right.
that has been in favor of this over the past 8 weeks.
Mm.
So, I was expecting the train to come and just
Right.
keep on coming.
I was a little, I thought it would be 80-20, 80%, obviously, against redistricting. I thought there would be some people that wanted to, maybe for special ed reasons, maybe Moody School had something they need or something like that, but I was just shocked. By
Well,
it.
here's the other problem about everything that they've done so far. They don't know, other than switching schools, they don't know anything logistically
Right.
about
Right.
the plans. So they can't tell you how much more it's going to cost. They can't tell you how long kids are going to be on the bus. They can't tell you if the programs that are currently set up in McDonough, because they have a certain amount of economic imbalance, they can't tell you if those programs are going to transfer when they move the kids.
Because they don't know.
They just haven't looked into it.
Well-
They're just looking into this quote-unquote socioeconomic balancing without any of the logistics saying, oh, once we pick a plan, we'll figure out the logistics.
But the problem is there is no plan
Right.
that we know of.
Yeah.
And if there is a plan, I'm sure it would be out there because they would say, well, we're going to do this.
they looked at a number of plans,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they finally settled on, I think, not that they really settled on any, but there were two that seemed to rise to the top, and both of those were just unworkable.
Yeah.
So you can imagine how much
Right.
worse the others were.
Right. Now, this study cost how much, by the way? Was it $41,000?
$40-something thousand dollars.
That's just
And,
ridiculous.
there was, interestingly enough, when you talk about busing and how kids don't like it,
Mm-hmm.
a couple of weeks before, some of us had been at a meeting with the teachers union over at the Middletown High Library where our mayoral candidate, Sandra was being interviewed, and a question came up about Woodrow Wilson Middle School, Keigwin, and because there's some talk about combining them into a single middle school.
Sure.
And they really like the sixth graders going to their one school by themselves. And they said the other thing, interestingly enough, because Woodrow, it used to be that Woodrow and Keigwin were both on the same campus.
Right.
Right.
Then we built the new high school, and we moved
Right.
Woodrow to Hunting Hill Avenue. Well, when they're on the same campus, the sixth graders were bused with the seventh and eighth graders.
Right.
Well, now they're not bused together anymore. And they really don't want them together on the bus. And now you're talking about kids that are only 1 or 2 years apart.
Right.
So it's kind of like talking about out of both
you
sides
know,
of their mouth.
And
But yet 6 years apart's okay.
6 years apart's okay.
And they're a lot
6 year
smaller.
span
You're
is
dealing with
okay,
kids,
yeah.
kindergarten kids.
And first graders and stuff. I mean, and again, and again, size-wise, you're talking about, I mean, when I was in 5th grade, I was 5'5". A kindergarten's what? This big? I mean, they're a little 3-foot nothing, you know, and they're going to be intimidated because of the simple fact that they're little kids, you know.
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
And it's how
And
scary is
plus
that
the
for
whole thing
them?
is new to them anyway.
Yes.
Right.
Or after speaking to parents, what happens when the 3rd grader dares the kindergartner to go to the back of the bus and kiss a 5th grader?
Usually
Which-
there's probably a physical
which-
altercation, I would
Yes.
assume.
Well, the problem is that this is happening on the bus
Right, no,
now,
right,
because
right.
it's unsupervised. And so now you want to keep the kids on the bus even longer?
Because studies show that. Kids enjoy it.
And to
I want to know where the study came from.
Don't go there with me. I know where it's from. I can find that out.
to go into, by the way, the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders sharing the same bus, the last Board of Ed meeting, they're now talking about doing research into combining the schools again.
Yeah.
So they would be sharing the same bus, even though the teachers that we spoke to specifically said that's a bad idea.
It's so mind-boggling for me as an educator. There are so many problems that need to be looked at within the public educational system, and it's like they're inventing a problem.
Well, they've come up with a solution in search of a problem, is what they've done. I mean, and
Multiple
usually when you
solution
do that, I mean, they're anticipating a problem of, well, the problem you have is overcrowding at Farm Hill.
Right.
They've wrapped into this, you know, a racial imbalance problem at McDonough and a potential racial imbalance problem at Moody and a socioeconomic imbalance problem
Which
district-wide.
doesn't need to be looked at anyway.
You know, when you start anticipating a problem and solving a problem that you don't have, quite often you end up solving the wrong problem.
Right.
And you have to go back and do it again anyway.
Yeah.
Because you didn't really address the problem you do have.
So it would have been better, and full disclosure, both of my children go to Farm Hill.
Right.
There's full disclosure out there. But it would have been better if they sat down with the Farm Hill folks, PTA, all the shareholders, and whomever, and said, we have a problem with overcrowding. And we'll look at that and see what we can do with it slowly and see what we can do. And maybe organically we can find a solution. But it's like Councilman Giuliano said, it just, they don't even know what are they going to do next? Build a rocket?
I mean,
But here's the problem, though.
Since you don't have a legal problem,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You do not have a legal problem.
Yeah.
You can almost solve that overcrowding problem at Farm Hill voluntarily. I'm sure you'd go to a number of those parents
Right.
and say, how many of you would voluntarily like to go to one of the other
Right.
schools
Biofield, what? Yeah, sure.
in the district? You know, whether it be McDonough, even if you wanted to drive your kid out to Moody every morning, God bless you.
There may be a reason why.
You know, go ahead.
Maybe they have a cousin there or
Lawrence
something.
or Wesley or something like that.
Ask the parents.
Especially Lawrence and Wesley, I think, are the most underutilized.
Yeah.
So you ought to give some incentive for Farm Hill kids to go to one of those two schools.
Right. And
Right.
you may have 65 kids go. You don't
You
know.
don't know. But I think enough would take you up on that offer where you'd probably solve your problem.
Well, if you look at the Farm Hill district, it's the worst gerrymandered district probably in the state. And part of the problem is Farm Hill extends all the way up on
Millbrook Road.
on the riverside
Yeah.
of Main Street. And so all those kids that could be walking to McDonough and all those parents that could be walking their kids to McDonough and getting parent involvement, they're going to Farm Hill right now. So how about the simple solution of, hey, if you're in walking distance of McDonough, do you want to walk
So
to
you're
McDonough?
saying that sentence, Chris, could have potentially saved the town $41,000.
Yes. And God knows
He's
how
like,
much
yes.
more.
You didn't even wait, Chris.
God knows how much more because If they, at the next redistricting committee meeting, if they don't
Yeah.
scrap everything they have and start all over again,
Right.
clearly something's wrong.
Well, what bothers me as a
I think
I
teacher
think
is
the
that.
first thing they ought to scrap is the name redistricting committee.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
But the
Once again,
$41,000
it implies
to me.
a solution that, to
That's
a
a
problem
teacher.
that you don't
That's a
have.
first-year teacher in the
Yeah.
classroom with the kids, instructing the kids. That really bothers me, and I'll say it. I just said it.
Or how about it's the paraprofessionals that can watch recess for
Right.
the K through 5 kids, so that
Right.
the teachers can actually have prep
Absolutely.
periods rather
Absolutely.
than watch recess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what was the union's position on this? If you do you know, what was the Middletown Federation of Teachers saying on this?
They haven't made it.
Right.
They haven't come out and said
Okay.
anything.
I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I'm curious too.
Billy, any questions for the panel here?
No, I mean, I guess what it comes down to is just that this is the hot button question right
This is
now.
a huge button question.
I mean, and this is something that anybody who has a school-age child has interest in. Of
course.
Because
That's why it was
this is gonna
crowded.
affect- right, and that's why it was crowded. And again, I have a question. Didn't they just try to solve this problem a few years ago? Chris, you touched on it.
Yeah.
5 years ago, wasn't this something that they sort of did and they like kicked the can down the street?
Well, they
kick the can.
did. They redistricted 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And then they spot redistricted 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's what it
5
was.
years ago, the idea is you had a lot of kids from North End that were actually being bused all the way out to Moody.
Right, I remember that.
And instead of shipping them out to Moody, they sent them to Farm Hill. A lot of kids that had previously gone to Snow were redistricted into McDonough. Lawrence, I think, lost about 70 kids, but these were kids that could roll out of their beds and roll into Bealfield.
Right.
And Moody, I think, which had a lot of kids in it, at that time had over 500 students in
Right.
it.
They
They
had the
went
portable
way down in
classroom. Right,
population.
they had a portable classroom at the time, I
So
remember that.
what they did is they made the districts more contiguous. But prior to that, you had kids were going from pillar to post all over the city, and it was a real mess. But like you said, the one thing they did is McDonough has always been close to being racially imbalanced, and had they taken all the North End kids and put them into McDonough, they probably would have been
Right.
over the limit. So they had to send them somewhere else,
Right.
and the easy choice for them was
Farm Hill.
go to Farm Hill.
Yeah. So you're watching The Edge, and we're sitting here with Councilman Giuliano, former Mayor Giuliano, and candidate for the Board of Education, Chris Petter, and Billy Wilson's on my left. The number to call, live TV, unlike some other TV shows that don't take live calls.
They don't have shows anymore, do they?
I don't think so.
I don't think so neither.
860-30.
613-31.
That's 860-30.
613-31.
The topic tonight, obviously, are current issues and local issues, but the big, as Billy said, hot topic thing tonight to talk about, or topic to talk about, is the potential redistricting of our beloved schools.
Yeah.
And everybody here is against that. All the people at the meeting, I believe it was Tuesday night, were very much against that. So give us a call at 860-30.
613-31.
Well, we have a special guest star tonight. Councilwoman Kleckowski will be here later, speaking her mind on the issue, and I really want to hear her. Yeah, she plays percussion.
And she does
tonight.
tap. And she does tap.
Not tonight, though. That will be on the Variety Hour.
Who cares?
Who cares?
People.
Oh, please call. Otherwise, we're going to talk to ourselves all night.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And we do that enough already.
Wait, but we can always bring up, here's my thing, we can always bring up HGTV if we need to.
Right.
I love
Oh,
the look on
please
set.
don't. It's another one.
Flip it or turn it or something like that. It's all I know is this show that they have.
It was one of your shows, I think.
Yes.
What did we do?
Or was it? No, it was somebody else's
No,
show.
we didn't do. I
It
don't
was
know.
another councilman
No, it was another. Yeah, it was with another Salafia.
Yeah.
We won't mention her name.
And another councilman that
Yes.
spent half the show talking about gardening. I
Yes.
was like,
Oh my
am I
God.
watching HGTV or what? What is?
But I like to give out a special sentiment to Bob Stefarak Jr.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's in the hospital for surgery. So, Bob, I don't think you're watching, but
You're in our prayers.
you're in our prayers, and I hope you're well. I hope your dad is well. I saw him last night
Yeah,
at
he
Westfield.
looked good last night,
Yeah.
actually. I got to talk to him for a few minutes
Right.
beforehand. Came over, showed me a scar where he had his defibrillator put in.
Bob
got a
showed what is it?
pacemaker.
He showed you the scar.
Yes, he did. He showed me the.
That's
he showed
so
me where to put
Lyndon
it.
B. Johnson.
He did. He
pacemaker
showed me
in.
the scar, and
So-
he said, this is where it went in. And I said, well, how you feeling? He says, my breathing's a little bit off. I said, how's your son doing? He said, I don't know right now. He says, I hope he comes through okay.
Yeah.
It's,
So I hope everything works out for the
Yes.
Stefarak family.
Yes.
We're pulling for you, Bob Jr.
Yep.
you know, your whole family and all that. What I want to do now is I want to talk to Chris because give Chris some final words.
Yep.
On why he's running, what he plans to do, more about Chris, and then we're going to go to a 4-minute break. And the
Now, how are we going to do the switch? Are we going to have two switch, or are we going to do a single switch?
Okay, you're the man
Yes.
who's going to have 1,000 candidates on Friday.
Oh,
And
that's
you're worried
gonna
about
be
my
fun.
switch.
That's-
You're worried about
listen,
my switch. See what I'm
You
talking
can see how
about?
many people are going to actually
You should be
show
on the
up.
redistricting committee. I'm telling you.
No,
right
no, no. Because listen, Sanders, my co-host. We're just going to do it
I
that way.
want-
It's going to be easy.
I'm not going to go there with that. But
Yes. Don't start.
I got money bet on that. But it's up to the candidates
Yes.
because it's their show.
Yes.
So Billy, all I asked for was Chris to give a final response, or whatever you want to talk about.
Okay.
It's
Well,
Chris. All about Chris.
Well, I think to say why I'm running, I'm a lawyer here in Middletown, and one of the things I do is I advocate for children that are being bullied. And when you start working with kids closely that are being bullied, especially the younger ones, I mean, we're talking 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, you want to make a difference. And unfortunately, the way the laws in the state are written, it all comes down to the school board when it comes to determining whether or not it's bullying.
Yep.
In fact, I haven't had a single client yet that the school has said it's bullying. So I decided to run for the Board of Education because the only way to take bullying seriously is to actually call it bullying and do something about it. We have a great program, the Pride Patrol, that is bringing awareness to kids about bullying, but until the school actually starts doing something, until the Board of Education starts doing something, we're going to have the problem in our school. And every parent I've talked about says that it's a problem in the school. So we can say things are improving, we can say the culture is improving all we want, but that's just because we're not calling it bullying.
Right.
So let's actually do something about what's happening. And if you put me on the Board of Ed, along with voting down the redistricting, I'm going to actually try and do something to change the bullying culture in Middletown.
I have a question for you, attorney, if you don't mind me asking.
Yes.
And this is a hypothetical for both the attorneys. If you are a school teacher and you see something you believe is bullying, and you place that word on a document what's called a referral, but you've been told by administration that you are not allowed to use that word in referral. So would you be insubordinate? And I mean, in their eyes, I guess you would be. But I mean, what are the legal rights for the teacher in that case, if you know?
You're probably not going to have much.
Right.
Because the State Board of Education has said that bullying is up to the school board. So if the school board tells you not to put it down because they don't believe it's bullying, then you're,
So in a way, the school board is controlling the variable.
Oh, absolutely.
They're controlling
Well, I think you can always describe what you observed.
Right.
Just detailed description of what happened, and let whoever reads that report you filed can draw their own conclusions.
Right, and especially if it's if you're using exact dialogue and the actions that took place.
yeah.
And,
I mean, because on the other hand, it's fair to say that bullying is a conclusion.
right.
Tell me what happened, and then I'll conclude that that's bullying,
Right.
objectively or not.
Right.
So you can avoid getting in trouble with the school board if they told you don't use the word, but you can get your point across.
If you use a lot of adjectives, be objective of what you see. So forth.
Yep. Okay. Exactly.
We learn something new every day on The Edge.
Yes, we do.
And we're going to take a 4-minute break. We're going to watch the Oddfellows Playhouse
Again.
again. You know what? Do you have a solution again? No, I don't see you with a PSA.
We could have put up some nice veteran stuff up.
Well, we'll talk.
We'll
So
talk.
we'll be back with Deborah Kleckowski in 4.5 minutes.
Whoa. Echo.
I know.
Proud of is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I had a great cast, and the set was amazing.
I find Oddfellows a great family experience.
Oddfellows Playhouse.
Promoting the growth of
Young people through the performing arts.
"37 years ago, Oddfellows Playhouse was started by 4 Wesleyan students as a community theater program for young people. Since that time, Oddfellows has grown into Connecticut's largest youth theater, serving over 31 towns throughout central and southern Connecticut. Nearly 2,000 young people a year come through the doors of Oddfellows, where they make friends, learn about their community, and learn about themselves.
It gives them confidence to be leaders. It gives them confidence to work with other people. It offers a whole experience where they grow as people.
At Oddfellows, we run programming year-round for students as young as age 3 all the way up till age 20 in the performing arts. Oddfellows offers a technical theater program for middle school and high school students.
Well, the great thing about theater is it's one of the last places in modern society where everyone's dependent on one another. Getting everyone to collaborate together, from backstage crew to the kids who are actually doing the performances. Everyone's a key part of the program.
The teen repertory program is for our high school students. The Summer Shakespeare Academy is a 4-week intensive for high school students where they're immersed in the world of Shakespeare.
You get legitimate training. You learn how to say things eloquently, and you just have a great time, and you meet so many different types of people.
What she just said clears up what his story, what happened after his story, right? Oh, so you have to.
In stage combat class, I learned how to fall correctly, making it look like I'm actually pushed, but it's all in my control. Like throwing punches and making sure that the people who are being punched are the ones in control. David, our instructor, is really fun and really great, and he is really good at teaching us, because when he first taught us the things, it was sort of a just watch me and then you do, and then slowly we just became more and more comfortable with it, and he would add more things, and so it was very easy to pick up on.
Good.
Nice.
It looks really good. So just make sure you don't flex the foot. You keep the toe pointed, and you're sending that energy up, and you can go up and quite a bit.
The junior repertory program is for middle school students in grades 6 through 8. Troops and Arts Explorers is an after-school multi-arts program for at-risk youth. Little Fellows is our newest program. It's for students aged 4 through 7. It's a 2-week multi-arts program involving dance, storytelling, movement, acting, and visual arts.
I really like doing drawing and crafts. We write stories and then draw pictures about them.
And we're just trying to give them fun things to take home so that they can really feel accomplished.
Our first ACT program is offered on Saturdays for preschool and kindergarten students. Our Stage 1 program is for grades 1 through 3. Students begin with Complete Actor 1, where they learn the basics of acting, and then their next program is a mini production. Our Stage 2 programs are for grades 4 through 5. Students begin with Complete Actor 2, and then their next class is a mini production. The Children's Circus is a 5-week half-day program where students are exposed to circus skills, including clowning, juggling, stilting, unicycling, and acrobatics. It culminates in an outdoor circus show for an audience of over 1,500 people. If you want to know more about our classes and programs and see how they fit with your schedule, check out our website at oddfellows.org.
Oddfellows. Back. Wow. Cut off.
That was a PSA, and it
Yes,
was a
it
good
was.
one. And I will
Oh, that was not good.
Yeah, what's happening? We're going to have to ask you to come in on Saturdays. Anyways, thank you. We're back to The Edge. We're going to be taking phone calls at 860-613-3031. Billy Wilson is my co-host. And Billy,
yes.
Did you see any good movies this weekend? Because
Yeah,
I saw your card by the movie theater a lot.
Bridges of Spy.
How was that?
Bridges, it was excellent.
The
Tom Hanks.
Gary Francis Powers type of thing?
Yes, but it was not Gary. Right, Gary Francis. And then it was I forget the Russian spy that we exchanged, and then we also got back a kid that was a Yale student who happened to be over there and got caught in East Germany as they were building a wall, East Berlin.
That's correct. Do you remember? This is Edge trivia. Remember the guest? He sat at this chair. Well, I don't know if it was that chair, but he sat, one of our early guests, and he was in the CIA. And we talked about Gary Francis Powers.
Oh, yeah.
And he said Gary Francis Powers was actually insubordinate. He was not supposed to eject.
He was supposed to die.
He was supposed to die, right?
But if you...
Do you know who that was?
Oh, yeah. Former Congressman Simmons.
Right. When he was he used to come on the show, right?
Yes.
And we would ask him, like, questions about the CIA and who shot JR and all that type. And he laughed so hard when I asked him that. Yeah. It was very funny. I said, big question, JR? America wants to know.
Who shot JR?
Who shot JR? He's like, JFK. I'm like, we know. It's a joke. Forget it. Remember he used to come on the show to dance? Remember one time he danced on the show?
Yes, he did.
I mean, when do you get a congressman dancing on your show?
No,
That was
Only
no idea.
Listen, this
Take
was
it
the
easy
first
with
show
it.
to give him a platform.
Well, he promised me that if he won, he would come back on the show
Yes,
and do
he
the
did.
interview, and he did it.
He did.
Yeah,
He kept his word.
He blew off Chris Velarde on Channel 8,
Well,
and Chris Velarde was very upset about that.
Oh, wow.
On the live interview was in you were there.
Yes.
It was in New London, I think, at a hotel.
Yes.
That at the convention or whatever.
Yes.
When he won at headquarters, I remember that. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Who did he be? Gagenson?
Gagenson.
Gagenson, right?
Potholder Sam.
Potholder.
Sam.
Yeah.
That's what my mother said. My mother voted for him just because she got new
the
potholders.
right? That's
I said, really, he's bribing you with a potholder.
Well, that's
really?
what it's about. And Republicans are getting better swag. I noticed we're
Yes.
getting better things. We have the bags, the Sandra bags.
Yes.
I like those bags.
They're better.
You use them.
The T-shirts.
The T-shirts are great.
Yep.
But the potholders, there's something about the potholder.
I don't know. It just was the thing.
Right.
Potholder Sam.
Right. And he lost. I mean, no, he ran against Eddie Munster.
And
Eddie Munster lost by like one vote.
It was
Like
the
2
night.
votes.
The night we
Is
went
that
to
true?
bed. The night we went to bed.
3 votes, I think it was.
It was
very
it was
slim.
it was
I think it was 3.
it was 3 votes. It was 3 votes. We thought we had it down to 1 vote up.
Well,
but then it went to 3 votes, and what we were told by Gingrich said that if he's ahead at any time in a vote, we will sit him at Munster over because they had control. They had just
Right.
got control of the House. We will sit him, but he never got the
well,
vote where he was ahead. It was
you
21
have
votes
to
at the
feel
very
bad
end.
for the guy. First of all, with the name Eddie Munster.
Oh, he played up the Munster thing really great, though.
You thought so?
Yeah,
I
he
don't
was
know.
great
I
at
don't,
that. He did
because
pretty
the
good.
Republicans would have that sense. I don't know if he did.
I thought he did.
He was
No,
walking
he
around
did.
with a big bat, boom, boom. I don't know.
He was
I don't-
good.
I don't-
He was good. I enjoyed him.
He was a nice
just-
guy.
He was a really
Very
good
nice guy,
guy.
yeah.
He was just that close. It could never get over the
2
hump.
times that happened.
Yep.
Twice.
The second time he was just so close.
Yeah.
It was just tough.
Right. Well, all right.
And then Rob got in, and
Yeah.
and Sam Gatenson and his classy self didn't want to concede, even though he
remember
knew
that,
that
yes.
night he did not want to concede.
Right.
And he didn't
Right.
concede until the following day,
Yes.
late in the day. He wouldn't concede.
Yeah, that
till.
was
So-
pretty wild. I remember that.
Yeah.
And then Joe Courtney came in a few years later
Yeah.
and unfortunately beat Rob. But on that note,
Yes.
we're going to introduce 2 new guests.
Yes.
They're
They're not new to us, though.
Well, not new to us, but new to the show tonight.
Well, tonight.
Tonight's edition of The Edge, which
Yes.
is live, 860
613
3031.
3031.
Councilwoman Deborah Kleckowski is on my right, and she's a current councilwoman and does a lot of other things too. And on the far right is our planning and zoning. You are the
Vice
chairperson.
Vice
chairman.
chair.
I should know that because I go to almost all the meetings. So what's up, ladies? How are you, Deborah?
Good, thank you for asking. I just want to tell Molly that JR is from Dallas, not from Green Acres. I said, you know who JR is.
Oh, jeez.
I was like, the horse? Who's the
No.
horse?
No.
That's Mr. Ed. Never mind.
Molly, listen to me. Molly, listen to me.
Wow.
We're going to have to show her that.
Molly,
Very old.
Molly, listen to me very carefully. First came Mary Martin, and she was Peter Pan. She gave birth to Larry Hagman. Larry Hagman ended up finding a genie. The genie came out of the bottle, and they had adventures in I Dream of Jeannie. That show went off the air. He joined the cast of Dallas as the evil J.R. Ewing.
Yes.
And I think it was summer 81, Seb.
It was summer of 81, wasn't it?
J.R.
Yes.
He knows.
The whole summer, that's all anybody talked about. Who shot JR?
It was in May or maybe early June, and I was watching this I used to translate Italian shows to my grandparents. And I remember my grandfather, because they thought JR was a good guy. He was not a good guy. He was a very bad guy, but because he looked good.
With the hat and stuff, yes.
Bum, 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 bum. Well, anyways, JR, questa di morte. They thought he died. All summer, no one knew who shot JR. It was a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very big Missed People magazine.
Yep.
You know what? Why they did that? Larry Hagman wanted more money.
Yes.
And this is a true story. The producers hired Robert Culp, and they filmed a reel where JR is in the bed and his face is all bandaged. And they unmask, and it's Robert Culp, who was an actor from I Spy at the time.
Yep.
And they showed it to Larry Hagman at his house. They said, Larry, you either come back to the show, or we got Robert Culp, but he's working cheaper. Larry Hagman came back. Yeah. Wow. And it turned out it was Mary Crosby, right, the actress, right?
Yes.
Mary Crosby, who was Bing Crosby's niece, I believe.
Yep.
Who was his wife's sister who shot him. Not that anybody cares now. So I asked Rob Simmons, who was a congressman, I said, Rob, America's been asking. You're in the Central Intelligence Agency. You have the files. Who shot JR? He goes, it's JFK. JFK. Bob's like, wait a minute.
Yeah, Bob was like, he was lost.
Anyways, that was my history of the edge. We've done a lot on this show, okay? We've uncovered secrets of soap operas. How are you?
Good, thank you for asking.
What was up with you at the redistricting? I saw you were on the side. You
I was
you were
on the
tired.
side.
You looked very tired.
Yeah, I was running from somewhere.
Running from somebody or someone?
No, I think I was coming from a school event,
Okay.
and I was late. But
you had on the red jacket.
I did?
Yeah, I thought so. So that means you wanted to speak, I thought.
No, but I am a parent.
Okay.
I have a student. One of my kids is at McDonough in the STEM program, and my other child is at Wesley. And redistricting, of course, is something we talk about in our house.
Sure. For Tom, the redistrict?
For Tom.
Okay.
Yeah. For to Chris's point, my son took a bus from. I had to drive him to snow school for the STEM program during the summer, and then he took a bus. I believe it was to Moody, and he was totally exhausted when he came home. It was about 40 minutes, 50 minutes, depending, and it was a small group of kids. But busing is not good.
No, and I can tell you, I've been on field trips with kids.
Me too.
Yeah, I know you have. It is exhausting.
Very exhausting.
And with older kids, it's exhausting. And imagine little, small children.
I know,
It's hard.
and it just shouldn't be. We have 8 elementary schools because we believe in having schools in our neighborhoods. Like I attended Snow, I walked, which I understand they don't do anymore from the projects to Snow, but we walked. And the other thing I wanted to comment on, people didn't talk about race or socioeconomics. They talked about their kids liking their school. And I thought that was a really important point. I think adults are still stuck on this whole race and ethnicity thing. Even at the college level, students have no idea.
With the media, do you think it's indoctrinated?
Well, I think it has political points and it gets people agitated.
Right.
But kids don't know. My kids don't know. They talk to
there was
parents.
a mother that kind of said that night.
Right, she did say that.
Friends with everybody
they just want to be friends. They don't understand.
Play football, in the recess.
That's right. But what she did say is, I don't want my child going to just say Wesley and saying, "Oh, that's that kid from Snow."
Right.
And it wasn't about race, but it was about where they came from.
Right.
These are housing issues. That's not often brought up, but these are housing issues. And how we pepper affordable housing throughout our area. We used to be called the catchment area, but Middletown. And we just shouldn't have, this issue, the Board of Ed, as Chris said, they were supposed to only talk about
The
Farm Hill.
issue.
Right.
And somehow it blew up. And I think that parents did a really good job, first of all, talking. They took command of that microphone. But we're talking about children. And what was very interesting is not one parent said, "I hate my school."
No.
My kids aren't getting a good education.
That was my point. Not one person.
Not one person.
We love our teachers. We love Mr. Henderson. We love.
And kudos to McDonough, who had their principal was there, and a lot of parents and teachers from McDonough were there. It's a very different school. Somebody did say that teachers need to be trained to handle different kinds of students.
We have professional development.
You know what?
And
you don't need to be trained to be kind.
Right.
And if that's so, then you need to leave education.
No, I agree with you. But
I mean, that's a silly statement. We need to have professional development to have our teachers.
I'll tell you, teachers, we have professional development on things that, we have Homeland Security professional development. And I'm supposed to speak to the chief of Homeland Security. It's nuts.
Yeah.
I don't even know why we do it. Anyways. So
I am not, I've never been. In the 80s when I worked for Upward Bound, redistricting was a big deal.
Under Peter Budrick?
Under Peter Budrick, and fought for neighborhood schools. I think it's important to walk. I think it's important for parental involvement, and we all know the little secret that school systems, this is not so much in elementary, but later on, get involved, but not really.
Right.
You're not really welcomed as a parent.
Right.
So that's a big issue too. But to have kids walk to school is really important.
Walk together and build trust.
But just walking. How about saving on buses?
And how about building up your cardiovascular system?
Building,
Exercise?
Because I have noticed.
So our planning people here could have walks.
Wow.
And sidewalks.
Because, you
right?
know, I've noticed that the buses have now become sort of taxi cabs. They go from two houses to two houses.
Oh, because parents go up, you know, I mean, my children take a bus.
Right.
You know, we live across the street from Wesley, really.
Yes.
But we can't cross
No, but
Route 17.
I know where you live. It's,
And Tommy takes the bus to STEM. They have like a little van.
That's at the McDonough School.
The McDonough School. And, you know, for the STEM program, they also have an after-school program. So my son goes to school he gets picked up at 5 after 8 and comes home at about 5:30.
That's a long day.
Because they have an after-school program.
Very long day.
But you know, these kids are so into it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great thing. And I think each school has their own personality.
Sure. Which is good.
Which is good.
Could you explain to the viewers what STEM is?
STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math.
Nice.
Everything is done on these Apple iPads. The teacher sends home what their homework is, and they have to do blogging. They have to answer. They have to write essays, and of course, a lot of mathematics.
And are the kids provided a device, or do
Yes.
you have to?
No, they're provided.
Pay type of deal.
Right. No play to pay.
That's whatever.
So that's what they do, and he's all excited.
Right.
Now Wesley has a very different personality, you know, which happens to fit my other kid.
Right.
So
now this program was open to you if you chose to use it.
no, you had to test.
Get a test.
You had to test, and it can't be open. They're doing very, very difficult mathematics. You had to test in.
Right.
What was the percentile he was in?
He did very well. I almost pulled my children from the SBAC test, and
I remember this.
you know, and I didn't. And they happened to have done very well. He almost scored perfect in mathematics, and oddly enough, my other one did very well in English. That said, it's still a silly test.
Yes.
You know, but I just wanted to see where they would go. But it's really important that we focus on neighborhood schools. We focus on parental involvement. And we focus at kids today. This is a race thing with us still, adults, not with kids.
No.
You know, even glass ceiling. I talked about the glass ceiling at the college level. These kids have no idea that they can't be whatever they want.
Nor should they.
No, nor should they.
So, lesson learned.
All right. Let's have
and Molly, what
let's
about
talk to
you?
Molly.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what
I
I'm
wanna ask
curious
Molly
about?
something.
Yeah.
Go
What
ask
about
Molly something.
schools and neighborhoods?
Well, we have in Middletown. We have to revisit our subdivision regulations. I think that's probably the most out-of-date section of our zoning code right now. And our subdivision our whole plan of conservation development was drafted 20 years ago. It's very good. I think it's very good. However, and then it was amended in 2010.
Right.
But the census data from it is from 2000.
Right.
So everything that was updated from 15-year-old census data, and looking back. So I think we're at the verge where we need to take a look backwards to say, what did we accomplish? Was it successful? What portions were not successful? What can we keep and what needs to change? And subdivision regulations are one of the things I think we really need to look at. Sidewalks are one thing.
Yeah.
You know, 20 years ago.
We tried that, and we
you know,
got sued.
Sidewalks are one
planning and zoning
thing.
then.
Bus turnarounds. The way we have a lot of north-south streets in Middletown. We don't have a lot of east-west streets when you really look at it. So
No.
that affects traffic. That affects neighborhood growth. The definition of affordable housing has completely changed.
Oh, yeah.
And who fits that, and the stereotypes along with it, so that a lot of people, think, well, we put it in one. The rule of thought is you put affordable housing on bus lines close to downtown. That's not always the case. Then you get pockets and things, and maybe this is where you get this socioeconomic imbalance.
But what does that really mean? Why does it matter? Not one parent, excuse me, Molly, came forward and said, we're not getting the services we need in our school.
Yeah, I didn't hear that. You're right.
So when you talk about socioeconomic, is it just thesis-based?
Well.
Or is it, nobody, to be integrated, of course, is important. But Middletown, by its own definition and how we are, is integrated.
We're very lucky how it's integrated.
We're very lucky, and if nobody's complaining that schools offer different things, but not one parent said, I'm disappointed in what my school offers. So what does it matter about their socioeconomic status?
I think it's more placement of subdivisions, placement of affordable housing, placement of different types of housing throughout in a more spread out way, so that you can make property values. I don't want to say even them out, but more or less there shouldn't be houses that in one section of town are worthless and it's a bad section, and then you have houses that are worth so much more than others. Well, there's got to be an evening out, a disbursement.
But a big problem with that happens to be, though, we have absentee landlords. I mean, I lived in the North End. Okay, I lived there for 13 years. John lived there for a number of years. You live sort of in the central. You live almost in that end of town.
Almost downtown.
Almost, yeah.
She lives in the rich end of the North End.
Yes. And and I'll tell you something. I think my biggest issue is that we had people who owned houses that lived in New York or lived out of state, and had no clue what was going on. I mean, we had drug busts, not constantly, but all the time. We had drug busts and drug issues. And nothing's being done about it because these landlords are nowhere to be found. You can't get a hold of them. You could have all kinds of issues, and that was part of the problem that we've had, and it's still part of the problem that in the North End, at least, that you have a lot of absentee landlords. You have people who rent, who just don't care, and that's the sad part is they have nothing invested into their neighborhood, unless they have children, and then they're invested. But if they don't have children, they have nothing invested in the area, and that's troublesome.
Well, I think that's a larger issue on the macro level about all these free things. We're dealing with that in our household, both Farm Hill and McDonough. Every kid gets free breakfast, free lunch, and then I had to sign some paper for potentially free dinner.
Which happens at McDonough right now.
And the child that attends McDonough was all excited about all this free lunch, and we had to explain that it's not free. Mommy and daddy, daddy works so that we pay taxes. And we have to make sure that, you don't send children to school and say, okay, now you eat. Because their school day is still that in that day, especially eating in the classroom, which really annoys me. But we try to, you don't go to work and then say, okay, I'm at work. It starts at 9, but I get there at 9:02, and then I have lunch, then I have breakfast, and I get a cup of coffee, and I really start work at 9:45. It's a bad precedent. And if we have children who are that hungry, those are issues that can be handled through social workers and, if need be, DCF and WIC and all those kinds of things. I would prefer that we send cereal, hot, cold cereal home. And I don't like having him go to school not eating. That's not how things should be done, or thinking that things are for free. It just starts this indoctrination about free.
The problem is, the killer is that there's nothing free. I mean, again, like you said, someone's paying for this, and it's the taxpayers are paying for it. And one way or the other, we're either paying on a local level, a state level, or a national level. We're all paying for it one way or another, and it doesn't help the student. It doesn't help the young person to feel that well, my free stuff is good, but you don't want them to go down that road because they're going to start thinking everything should be free.
Well, college students, I brought that up about, one of our representatives thinks that college should be free, community college, and the college students think so too.
Of course they do.
And I'm like,
they think things should be free?
Community college should be free.
Because they're 18, 17, 18, 19, they're, like you said,
and some of them, right, and they're indoctrinated. And I said, well, you had 12 years of an education. What did you do?
Well, I'll tell you a hypothetical. You just mentioned food in the classroom. I won't tell you what school, but the first day, they go over the rules. Teachers don't have kids with food in the classroom. Good rule. 2 days later, you see a food cart with a lunch person on every floor. So what type of message are we sending? But yet you have to let the kids in. It's like prohibition.
Well,
why are you doing this?
Last year, when students got breakfast and mine didn't, my kids would come home and say, Mommy, why are people eating breakfast and I can't? And they were in the same classroom.
Right.
You shouldn't be eating in a classroom, period. You should be eating in the cafeteria. You know, being poor is not a life sentence. It's a journey. It's just a moment in time, hopefully, and education and opportunities get you out of that. You know, every other Monday half day, Chris, get rid of it. It really ticks me off that every other Monday, they have a half day Monday off election day. How does that make sense?
No, it doesn't make any sense.
So, go ahead.
I want to ask Molly something. I'm going to take and go 180 degrees the other way now for a second.
Uh-oh.
Molly, one of the big things that we've talked about before, and it's still on the P&Z thing, and that's about the riverfront, which to me is the only issue why I'm running right now. In all honesty, I'll be honest out there. The reason I'm running is because I want to run because I want the riverfront done right. And my fear is that they try to put this floating zone in there, and they try to do things to get a shovel in the ground type thing, which really teed me off, and it's just very frustrating. And I said, where's our master plan? Not asking for a lot, folks. And the reason I say this, and I'm going to ask you this is not something for just us. This is for the next generation, the next generation, and the next generation. This is for 50 to 100 years from now. What are your thoughts on that right now, on what's happening?
I think part of it is, you know, we had us on planning and zoning. Everybody's like, you know, planning and zoning is made up of lay people, as it should be. We're a democracy. That's how it should be.
Right.
That being said, we're very, you know, we're all citizens. We're very good at knowing what citizens need and what they like and what the needs of Middletown are. We are not good at writing zoning code.
No.
No one up there is qualified to do it. We hashed it out for about a year trying to write riverfront language to get what we want. Project for Public Spaces came in. Everybody went to the riverfront workshops. We found out what people wanted. That workshop only programmed the public space. They didn't address the privately owned property, which is 75% of the property. Right. So to get what we want, which is economic viability, a grown grand list, which makes everybody's taxes grow down. They want housing values to even out, so housing to be worth more, property in general to be worth more. So to get the development that citizens are asking for, the department proposed this floating zone, which would keep the underlying zone, which is MX, B2, which is commercial, and housing mixed use, but add these other things on top of it. But it doesn't work because there's no incentive to do that. And the underlying zone doesn't go away.
No, it doesn't.
And there was some conflicting language. It was very, very poorly written. I'll give you an example. Make things sustainable. Make things New England-like. Chris is a lawyer, like, like
when shall is not shall.
Right. You know, developers aren't bad people. They're just people with a lot of money who want to spend it and make more money. Right. So which benefits everybody else.
But that's what you
exactly.
But that's what you want.
There was things in it that did not work.
Invest in your community and invest in the river, and to get that to happen, you have to give them some kind of outlay of what you can do, because if you're just giving them this thing that says, well, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and you're just floating things around.
There's no stopgap zoning either. There's no like temporary, because you pull a building permit, good for 4 years.
Right.
So my idea was to have a design, it's basically a design district, where you can get down to brass tacks if you want. You can get as specific as you want to be, but instead of controlling what's in the zone, it just controls what it kind of looks like and feels like in streetscapes.
We have about a minute, I believe, maybe 2 minutes. So let's go, Debbie, last thoughts, and Molly, last thoughts.
Well, one of the most important things we've been talking about is planning, and in economic development, we did work very diligently to get that proposal out and make sure that that language was clear and that it wasn't just housing, and there was a lot of controversy about that. So that proposal, has been clear. And I think that's important. That's why I'd like to stay on the council. It's really important to get more than 4 seats so that we can really control the planning. We've had a lot of poor planning, a lot of lack of follow through, people not sitting on committees and commissions, and they're out of compliance.
I mean, I'm running again for planning and zoning because we have a lot of unfinished business. There's a lot of poor decisions being made. There's not, planning, no fortitude. I mean, you watch the meetings and who comes prepared and who doesn't.
Right.
And
You're talking about commissioners.
And I'm talking about
It
commissions.
used to be a planning meeting and a zoning meeting, by
Yeah.
the way. That should be something to be looked at.
Yeah, we try to do some planning at the tail end of each meeting, but again, it goes into the better you can adhere to your plan of development, the more consistent decisions you make, the more attractive you are to people that want to build here.
All right. So what's going on?
We have just to let people know real quick. Show Friday night, 8 o'clock. Last live show before the election. Turn in. It's going to be live. We'll take phone calls just like tonight. And everybody's going to be here, and well, just about everybody. So hope to see you then, and we'll talk to you definitely the following Friday after the election, and we'll hopefully go over the results then. Take care. God bless, and have a great weekend.